Yo, how's it going everybody? You got Sketch here and welcome back to the channel. On this episode we're taking it back to the Wild West with one of the Super Nintendo's gallery shooters that was remastered in 2017. We're checking out Wild Guns Reloaded, developed and published by Natsume, listened to the Super Nintendo in 1995. The Reloaded remaster was released in 2017, adding 2 new characters and updated graphics for the PS4, PC, and Nintendo Switch, which is the version we'll be looking at today. Though before we get too far ahead, let's wrangle in the story. In an alternate Wild West timeline where steam technology rapidly evolved, the Kid family began constructing ranks of machines alongside their band of criminals. When Kid abducts Annie's family and finds them deleted, she vows revenge against them. Joined by Hired Gun Clint, they both embark on a gunslinging tour de force where you'll battle the Kid robot army and save Carson City in time for a sarsaparilla. Gameplay wise, you've got a 2D gallery shooter where you move along the arena from left to right as you dodge enemy fire. You've got an unlimited machine gun, you can grab numerous upgrades. You can also lasso enemies and temporarily stun them so you can either plan your next attack or get a little bit of breathing room. Special weapons range from shotguns, rapid fire machine guns, laser cannons, and grenade launchers, with the final course plunging racks of dynamite as a screen clearing attack. You've also got a hyper machine gun that you can use for a limited time once your special meter is full, giving you increased fire rate and damage. You can choose between Clint or Annie if you want the more original experience of Wild Guns, or you can choose Doris or Bullet and switch up the gameplay a bit with new attacks and defense patterns. Also, a Dachshund on a hovercraft is just hilarious to look at as you play. Doris comes in with heavier weapons off rip, so depending on how you want to run it, you have the arsenal to shut down the saloon, either solo or co-op with up to 4 players. You can evade attacks by dodging or dashing out of the path of bullets since they display trajectory markers on screen, and this will help you not get smoked, but be prepared for a lot of enemies and bullets to dodge. You can also double jump to avoid attacks or just get some extra ups during encounters. Much like Cabal, it's you against an army and they're going to overwhelm you with their human and cybernoid operatives. Enemies will be on several planes of stages, with some of them getting right in front of you in your face, allowing you to punch them, but these moments become dual since it's only one hit and you lose a stock. One hit is all it takes to send you off to pasture, and this game gets intense during each stage section leading up to a general, and boss fights are the third section of each stage. The catch is, if you lose all your stocks at any section of a stage, you go back to the beginning. While you have unlimited continues, you have to complete each stage without rinsing your stocks to progress. 6 stages doesn't sound like much at first, but with 3 sections each, you'll play through 18 arenas where enemies are going to gang up on you until the final fight. Boss fights are going to throw everything at you, and this is where your battle can come to an end, since again, if you lose all your stocks, you go back to the beginning of the stage. Even the first boss towers over you with a giant Gatling gun and a barrage of air-to-ground missiles. This boss even throws vehicles at you too, so this is a preview of what to expect moving forward. Boss characters will straight up cook those bones in later stages, so outgunning them and being quicker than they are is the key to victory. The difficulty of Wild Guns is certainly going to challenge most players since there is a rhythm to the combat. The one-hit deaths make this a much more challenging game since several enemies will take more damage than you and move faster than you can. If you're really unlucky, if you get the popcorn gun, you become a sitting duck surrounded by wolves for close to a minute. The game has got some chops for those willing to learn the dance, but it's going to make you work for it to get to the final encounter with Kid himself. Graphics wise, Wild Guns Reloaded runs on the Unity engine, which enables a higher frame rate than the original Super Nintendo cartridge, allowing for a 60 frame per second experience. What's interesting here is some of the same programmers who developed Ninja Warriors for the Super Nintendo also developed Wild Guns, and did it within roughly 5 months. The gameplay concepts came from numerous influences from spaghetti westerns to science fiction and manga. You can certainly see the influences of games like Dynamite Duke, or even more so Cabal or its sequel Blood Brothers. The game's art style is impressive and wonderfully detailed with its hand-drawn sprites and steampunk aesthetic. Each arena has destructible elements and a lot of eye-catching visuals, from the wide open spaces to the vaults overflowing with gold and treasure. Compared to the Super Nintendo version, the first thing you may notice is how each stage is now in widescreen, eliminating a lot of the scrolling, giving you the full arena to battle through each stage. The background details in each area leave a few secrets to uncover, like bonus points and items. The graphics being touched up and in cases redrawn in the Unity engine gives the game a much more detailed look and adds animation like Clint's poncho and the pleats of Annie's dress flowing in the breeze. You can also see an endless flood of shell casings hit the ground as you dump magazines through Carson City. The stage selection screen also has a new animation adding static and rotation to the menu, and this looks sick. Compared to the original, which was already stylish for its time, this adds another layer of making the graphics pop a little bit more. Sprites have been updated to be more detailed, and some have new animations even going as far to add elements to arenas, especially during boss encounters. While there aren't any new enemies in this version, sprites have gotten subtle reworks to make them look a little more fluid. The boss encounters are a great example of just how much the Unity engine adds by making boss encounters much larger and highly detailed down to the circuitry. Speaking of bosses, they've been updated from the original versions, adding in subtle changes to their attacks and damage animations. Given the additional real estate on screen, when bosses telegraph their attacks, they're a little bit easier to recognize since you can see more of the arena. Several boss characters will straight up dwarf your gunslinger, and the bosses look sick, from the Iron Giants to Kid himself and his human lieutenants. The Mechanical Crab is a sick battle, and compared to the Super Nintendo version, Reloaded adds new elements to each encounter. The ending credit crawl is now viewable on every difficulty, which was only seen on the hard difficulty in the original version. Sound-wise, Wild Guns Reloaded has updated the soundtrack much like everything else here, and serves up faithful renditions of the tunes heard in the Super Nintendo version. Hiroyuki Iwatsuki composes a bevy of bangers with a western twist using the Roland W30 sound libraries and PC-98 microcomputer. The tunes are hype, like being in the midst of a duel or full-on brawl at a saloon. Iwatsuki's rearranged versions of tracks add in electric guitar and live drums to good effect with well-timed shreds during those intense moments. It's really cool to see the same composer come back to the original work decades later and go over it with new sound hardware. With his decorated history at Natsume, his ear for rich sound shows in his track compositions. Sound effects are nice and punchy here, with some great audio work on the Super Nintendo being retained in the Reloaded version, without much change. Gunfire and explosions still have that Super Nintendo sound, though it sounds cleaner than its previous iteration. The new weapons like the laser beam and particle beam have unique audio that sounds like being inside of an electric coil. Characters still have their samples of losing stocks, but aside from the new character sound bites, it all remains true to the original. The rearranged audio does stand out, and if you've also played the original, those parts that are different will be noticeable. It's not a bad thing considering that this is the same composer and sound tech from 1994, and with its nearly 30-year anniversary, they pay homage to the original audio and add a few things to keep it spicy. Iwatsuki is on record talking about his experience as a composer with Natsume and scoring almost exclusively action games, and for someone who went from no experience and a good year to now, the progression is tremendously polished. Wild Guns Reloaded is an awesome way to play a Super Nintendo classic that for a long time remained one of the heavier cartridges in the catalog due to its late release at the turn of the console generation. It's rad that this, along with several other Natsume IPs, are getting re-released or a full-on remake, all of which have elevated the previous formula while staying true to the original. Back in the day, this was a fun, albeit difficult game to play, and with the new additions, it's still difficult, but you've got more options and means to get through the campaign. Getting the clear on this isn't a rewarding one, since much like their other games, they will make you work for it to learn the ropes. It's not quite on crash out levels of difficulty, but there are parts that will challenge most players, especially on the last two stages, but it can be done, and you're gonna have a good time doing it. Wild Guns Reloaded gets an 8 out of 10 and comes highly recommended to gallery shooter fans and fans of arcade-style games that will challenge most players. This, compared to the Super Nintendo original, is also significantly cheaper, being around $20 to $25 for copies on modern consoles. The original is also part of the free Super Nintendo Virtual Console on the Switch as well. If you're after a physical copy of the original, be prepared to pay upwards of $250 for NTSC copies and upwards of $150 for Super Famicom copies. If you're into gallery shooters, this should be in your collection, and depending on how you want to play it, there are many more options available now than just the original cart. This is often ranked highly amongst gallery shooters, and on the console it's typically a sought after one as well. If you can find the original for a good price, go for it. Otherwise, Reloaded Edition is a nice update and far more accessible. And thank you so much if you made it this far into the video. If you found this video helpful, that's awesome. Glad you use it as a resource. Check back often, we'll have more reviews and commentaries come up in the near future. But until then, take it easy and stay safe out there. I'll see you on the next one.